Now record.
I hate
There
it.
it is. There it
That's
is. That's how you know we
terrifying.
back.
Godspeed. Yeah, it can't officially start without Craig creeping us out and telling us that we're recording. And no matter
That's
how many
true.
times and how many podcasts we would do, it would always be the same reaction. Brain?
Hopefully it all works properly and nothing gets lost.
Nah, Craig always has come through for me. I've never had an issue with Craig.
That's good.
Yeah, once he says he's recording, he separates all the audio, and it's always clean, very easy, and it's always synced up. So, like the podcast will be up in like 10 minutes after we're done talking.
Yeah.
But let's go ahead and get the introductions out the way. This is the first official podcast for the Tells Company channel, server, organization, project, the Tells Channel project. I'll give a quick
lifestyle brand.
Yeah. A quick
Wow.
overview of what Tells Company actually is about. It's not a Ren Curie server. You know, it's not a hey, if y'all fans just come in here and let's not ever talk. This is an actual community project for networking purposes and for building solidarity and a centralized hub for the Tells community to actually be a part of with active leadership and active intent to elevate the Tells community, at least as far as the West goes. And hopefully later up the road, you know, things will play as they play. But that's the overall point of this server. So it's an actual community effort, not just a hey, do you like my boss collections server. Today, you already know who I am. Ren Curie, formerly known as Pissarro, formerly known as the Golden Clip 2, formerly known as Ephemeral Crow, Brother Ogie, Senpai Black, what other names I didn't went by, but I also have my boys, the OGs themselves, Dark Route 48,
Yes, sir.
Carmen Houdini,
Yo.
Soul Bez,
Yeah.
and I feel like I'm missing somebody. Probably Genesis, but we'll catch them another time.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But long story short, so this is the first podcast of we're talking about the same. This is why I wish I had that soundboard because I was gonna play that goddamn deja vu clip here because this podcast episode is literally the exact same topic we talked about like 2-3 years ago on the first podcast we did for my channel. Y'all remember that? When the
Yeah.
Castoria trailer
Yeah.
came out, after that
Oh.
Castoria stream when they showed
The gameplay.
the gameplay and we did that
Quote,
damn podcast and the first episode called my what was that little catchphrase they had for Castoria? Like my sin
Oh
is
yeah.
this is that, and I was like, my sin is loving tells too much.
Yeah, that's right.
That was the first podcast episode. We talking about the same exact nonsense we're about to talk about today. Talk to me. Final Fantasy 16 State of Play came out. Was that today?
Yep.
That
It
was
was, it was
today.
today. It was
It was
today.
today.
3 hours ago.
That was today. Today.
Man.
Drop y'all
oh,
opinion. We
man.
already know. Everybody unanimously agrees that 16 is about to completely change the game. Game looks absolutely amazing. Namco,
Yes.
let's talk about Namco. And what is Namco options and what the hell are we about to do now? Because we are, what, 2 years? Coming up on 2 years past that whole, we sold 3 million copies of Arise. But, and now 2021, we in 2023. What we cooking, bro? Somebody talk to me.
Really cooking.
I mean, there's always the chance that Final Fantasy 16 could come out and it actually doesn't play that well. It just looks fancy. But, you know, I think it's probably going to be good. But, you know, you have to point that out, that there is always the possibility that things don't play as they look.
Yeah, that's true. But hey, it looks phenomenal so far.
Well,
so,
give them credit for making a goddamn showcase that looks pretty damn confident that they know what they're doing and they're going to give us a good product. We can't say the same when we had 2 years of silence for Arise.
I mean, yeah, like
Mm.
they're even willing to get somebody from the combat design team of Devil May Cry. You know, one of
It
the
shows.
biggest pioneers of action games. You know what I'm saying? So that just goes to show that, like, clearly the Final Fantasy team is taking this very seriously to
Can we
reach out
say
with
the
somebody like
same
that.
for the Tales series of today?
No, I don't think we can.
No.
Please elaborate.
Hey,
As of right now. I think one of the biggest things that really was a eye opener for me was not only the state that the Symphonia port came out as,
That's a
but when
whole topic,
but,
boy.
but when Karani himself told me, I will not be buying this on Nintendo Switch.
Yeah.
I said, oh, holy shit, we are in trouble.
For those that don't know, I also go by Karani. So Karma Houdini, Karani, both me.
Yep.
And
Yep.
he was adamant in prior to the release of Remaster, he was very excited and very hyped for that game. And I remember we were the ones that were kind of like, I don't know, bro. And he was like, nah, it's gonna be portable. I get to play it in the bathroom. I get to play it in the kitchen. I can't wait to play something on it. And then Remaster dropped, and out of all people, for Karani himself to say, you know what, man, pass. That was that was an eye opener for me too, man. Because I honestly thought. I mean, that's the only reason. Well, one of the main reasons I would imagine people would have bought Remaster is because of it's portable now. I mean, we already had it on PS3. It's on Steam. Being on PS4 isn't much of a selling point. So getting it on Switch was a huge. That's the version that everyone was looking forward to. A complete disaster. I mean, I don't think it needs to be said any further, but we still gonna talk about it. Absolute complete disaster of
Really
a game. And the main question now is this is your response to 3 million copies sold for Tales of Arise, a game that you kind of pressured us into buying because you, as usual, it's like the third time I could think of where they kind of hold remakes and ports hostage. Buy this game or we won't, and we'll consider giving you remakes and ports. I remember specifically when they said that for Definitive Edition for Vesperia. I remember when they said it for Symphonia Chronicles.
Yep.
I remember I was there for all of it. I specifically remember each time, hey, we'll consider doing remakes and ports if it's a game. They said the same thing when they ported what was it, Zestiria and Berseria to Steam. Hey, if y'all buy this, you might see more games on Steam.
Now,
and here we are.
Now, what will change everything? Did they say that when they ported Abyss to 3DS?
Nah, not to my knowledge. I think Abyss 3DS just kind of came.
Yeah, Abyss 3DS came out like just sort of as a surprise, and then the month after that, Grace's F came out here as well.
Oh,
thanks to the
that was a weird one.
Hideo Baba. So rest in peace, Hideo Baba, bro.
Yeah.
But I mean, he the one who put in all the effort to get us these games. The series was dead in the West, and it most likely would be to this day if it wasn't for him.
Yeah, but, I remember when like a lot of people, including myself, or like I guess like not necessarily a lot of people like just in general worldwide, but just like people who were invested in Tales. Like I really did want like Grace's F to come out over here, but there was a time where I was thinking like, oh, I don't know, it might not happen because it was just taking so long.
I had completely given up
sure.
hope during that period of time that we would get any ports or localizations.
During that time for me, I just resigned myself to importing games. I just figured that was going to be my fate moving forward, which is why everything I do is pretty much in Japanese because I've just been importing for years. I just got used to it. I didn't start learning the language, but it was inevitably heading that route. And I was like, well, if I'm going to be able to continue playing this series, I'm going to have to go ahead and learn this here language. I haven't really dug in too deep yet, but that's besides the point. And here we are.
I remember the days of seeing all kinds of comments talking about, oh, look at that. This is that was when Exilia had like its first couple of trailers. I've been seeing comments on some oh hey look Tales of No English Releasia. Oh man, I can't wait to play that.
I mean, you still see a little bit of that whenever they'll make a tweet or something about actually because there's been a couple tone deaf tweets where Namco US themselves will post like a hey, remember the Tales series type stuff, and they'll put footage of games we never had. And everyone's in the comments like, man, I sure wish I could have played that one. I sure wish I could have played this one.
They're like celebrating the Tales series, and like remember I think they counted down to Arise by posting things from every series, and then like on the Tales YouTube channel they will frequently post things. Like they posted a scene from Rebirth recently with English subtitles. I'm like, wow, you guys like went out of your way to subtitle this cutscene that most English-speaking players will have never seen because they've never been able to play this game. But like you won't localize the game.
There's only like 7 of us that would have seen that scene and knew what was going on. Oh man, which begs the question, especially going off the state of play, why? Here we are after being once again kind of our arms twisted into supporting the game that some people are most likely on the fence. So I know I was definitely on the fence for Arise, but I still bought it as much as I kind of didn't want to. I still bought it, and funny enough, I'm probably the person who put the most hours in that damn game in the damn community, which is ironic in its own way. But it sells. That's one of the main arguments that counter arguments I would hear or see whenever I would, something will pop up on my feed on Twitter
Mhm.
is, oh, well, Ride sold, millions of copies, which part of me starting to wonder, is that even true? But tinfoil hat aside, why? Because it just doesn't add up to me, and especially seeing all these other companies. It don't even have to be RPG. It's just any company in general that you
Yes.
see a remake of something that comes out or a new game comes out, and it's massive success, massive sales, and the company everybody else seems to understand, like, okay, we have something here. Let's go ahead, full steam ahead. And that's saying, ports, remakes, collections, HD remasters, like, all kinds of
And
stuff are coming out, and we're
yeah.
sitting here like Squidward in a room watching everyone else having fun having fun
Mhm.
outside, and we get silence after, Rise sells. We get a picture of the cast dressed up in some orchestra costumes. They didn't even add that into the game. That, like, and then remaster happens. That's your response to 3 million sales. Like, at this point, at what point do you start to feel like, okay, maybe I'm being disrespected as a Tales fan?
Right.
Yeah, I mean that Symphonia remaster clearly shows multiple things. One, it shows that they don't have the resources to devote towards porting something that would take more effort. So they saw that as a low effort thing that they could just push out the door. But it also shows that they, even then, they didn't take the time to make sure that that would come out right. And that is very disrespectful, because like, we've received this game multiple times and it gets kind of worse each time. And this one was by far the worst attempt at putting Symphonia out. And that's not only my favorite Tales game, that's my favorite video game of all time. So, like they were
Mhm.
saying earlier, the fact that I chose not to buy it really shows that they just completely bungled it.
I've been feeling disrespectful for some time, but let me ask you
Yep.
this. I'm not a video game developer, but if they have more resources, how is a fan base, a handful of people, can come out with like a HD remaster of a game? Like, just simple texture upgrade. The Abyss HD remaster project is absolutely beautiful,
Gorgeous.
Yeah.
gorgeous, and that took a couple of months. And you're telling me that a company with actual resources and a team, can't do the same? I mean, look, I got roped into dumping textures, and I told y'all that story about that. I got roped into
Mhm.
it. It's like, there's only like two people who was working on that. I was a texture dumper. There was probably a couple others, and then there's like two people who, Panda and Dragon. They were the main ones who were actually upscaling the textures, and it looks absolutely phenomenal. I loved it. And I feel like that's if your computer can run the emulator, which is another topic. Once again, we have to talk about that. You have to pretty much run emulators just to play majority of the series. If the
Mhm.
fans can come together, if less than a handful of fans can come together and completely make a game look absolutely stunning in a remaster, what what's stopping Namco from doing that with Symphonia? They had enough
Yeah.
time.
Yeah, it feels very similar to that same kind of like situation and level of frustration that a lot of the Sonic fans had when they saw something like Forces comes out, and then they're like, well, what the hell? Because then they're seeing like all these like great fan projects, whether it's 3D or 2D, being done by fans who don't have that much resources. So they're just kind of looking at Sega like, what the hell? Why can't you give us something? Like, give us something really good. Give us something of quality that we can actually fondly look back on. I feel like the same way that with Tales. And then it's even more disappointing when you consider this is Tales of Symphonia. Like,
A
this
classic.
is a Tales game that a lot of people, including myself, have a lot of fond memories of, man. Like, like, if you go past just the remaster itself, like, just as a game, there's a lot to like about it. The characters, the story, the world, so it deserved to be treated better
You
than
want to
what we
know
got.
one of the greatest ironies of Symphonia is that there's an actual 4K texture upscale for the Steam version.
Oh, yeah.
I use that for my projects, and it looks absolutely
Hmm.
stunning. Looks
Mm-hmm.
great.
Again,
Incredible.
handmade.
Handmade. I didn't even know it was a thing, because I don't even know who made it. I just know that when I was using the Chaldean mod tool, and it was it had simple stuff like button image fixes and whatnot, and then there was something else that I used it for, and
Hmm.
I saw 4K texture. I said, 4K texture. I said, who the hell made this? And I clicked it, installed it, and I was like, oh snap! I said, this game was absolutely stunning. That's on Steam right now. I don't know where to find it. I just had an old mod installer that just kind of came with it. I guess
Which
it just
is, the Steam version is the best version of the game to
is.
play right now, basically.
I mean, it's the
Yeah.
most accessible as well.
Yeah.
That actually plays, good enough.
Works, and it works on a Steam Deck, so I play it handheld on my Steam Deck.
Yeah. So now I have to ask where, there's only so far you can go before I try to give the benefit of the doubt, and it's like, okay, I can't, I'm not gonna sit here and scream on developers because they have to answer to project manager, and the project manager has to go up the chain of command. So it's like, okay, maybe it's shareholders, maybe it's some cranky dude who's been mad since the what's it called, the Team Wolf days or whatnot. That's my personal theory. I've said it numerous times. I truly believe that somebody in the upper echelon in the chain of command still is salty about what happened back with Fantasia, and they just been kicking tails ever since. They just said screw them. However, when Tails were separate teams and they were their own, separate studio, they were pumping out. They were making progress. They were.
Yeah.
Even in their own engine, like each game had its flaws, of course, but the Tails series was in a very healthy place back then, which is funny now because I kind of wish we were back on, back when we had a Tails game every year. I kind of wish we were back then. We had hits and misses, but all those games were playable. They were all fun for the most part. Even Exilia, it's kind of sad that we're in a time now where I'm like, damn, I just wish we can go back to Exilia days. And that's a game I didn't even like that much. The story and stuff was fine. I just didn't like the little boss combat. But Exilia 2 answered that question, and then you saw each side or each team, go their routes, and they each had a hit. Destiny DC was phenomenal. Rebirth is great. Destiny 2 is great. Narakiri Dungeon X is absolutely phenomenal.
Graces is great.
Yeah, Graces is great.
That's my
And
favorite.
I've grown to actually like Graces a lot, casually speaking. And then on the Symphonia side, you saw the evolution from Abyss, Vesperia, Exilia 2, and the Innocence Art was peak. That was peak TP Symphonia style combat. And it's actually funny enough,
nobody will play because it's on the Vita and only in Japan.
And you can actually see where they were starting to slowly meld their ideas together, because the combat on that side was definitely starting to lean towards like more free form. Characters can kind of do what they want. There were still limitations, and you had access to be able to break those limitations a lot early, especially, I'm speaking on Innocence R, but you can see a lot of the ideas were starting to come together by that point. Like, I like how each side was able to evolve, and then they got merged in, and we've just been circling the drain ever
since like 2011. Basically, it's just been rough, and part of that is that they got absorbed into Namco. Tales Studio closed down. They lost a lot of personnel at that time, and they've lost some since. And also, just the demands of game development now are very different than they were during like the GameCube, PS2 era, where you could make really good games in like a year or two. Now, every game, in order to compete with others, they spend a long time making it. It's got to be beautiful graphics, realistic proportions for the world and everything, and that makes it take longer, makes it harder, makes it more expensive, but it doesn't necessarily make the game fuller or more complete or better.
Yeah,
that's the problem.
Yeah, because we now, because like y'all have to keep in mind, like for whoever's listening or watching, like we are living in an era where we are getting indie developed games, like independent studio games that are coming out with just as much, if not more quality than like a lot of the big AAA games you're used to seeing. So like keep that in mind. So that's like what like Karani is like also like getting at. It's just like I think they need to focus on what they specifically do best, not what not what everybody else is doing.
Mm-hmm.
Focus on what makes Tales great.
That's the biggest problem, is that they're trying to chase the trends, trying to, I guess, cast a wide net, and as a result, they're shaving things off. And it goes back to what we were saying with Final Fantasy 16. It's like there's so many games now that are doing like third-person action RPG combat. Exactly. So now that Tales has shifted away from its sort of fighting game-inspired linear motion battle system to the third-person action thing, what makes it stand out against any of these other games? Not a lot, at least not at a glance, not at a surface level. Not as a casual consumer looking at trailers. You're not going to be able to tell. And then you're going to look at Final Fantasy 16, and, well, that looks way better just at a glance. So,
And
I
you watch the
agree.
trailer and you say, "God damn, this actually."
Yeah.
I mean, then you see
I
the
re-
relink, the most recent relink gameplay
of
expo.
Grand Blue.
That game
Yeah.
looks absolutely phenomenal too. Even though it seems like
Yep.
the scope changed like a million times, but it looks like
Mhm.
it's finally at a
Is
point
that game
now.
ever going to come out?
I think it's coming out this year, actually,
Yeah,
uh,
I think so.
late this year.
Apparently.
But and then I'm not going to dunk on Arise too much because I think Arise was a decent game.
Oh,
But
absolutely.
at
Yeah,
some
yeah.
point,
I
it's
wouldn't
just
call it a
it's
bad
only
game.
so long I can keep making excuses for Tales
Right.
when I'm watching company after company and game after game and series after series just do everything better, and I'm starting to wonder like, what's the problem here?
I
You know,
mean,
I
I
can't
do
excuse it anymore. You know,
I do think I mean, like we've talked about, in private a lot, I do think Namco has just not been valuing the series properly, and now that Arise
Mhm.
has done well, I do think that I mean, they are putting out recruitment calls for more staff and things like that, so they're probably trying to increase the team a decent amount for whatever they're doing next. So I'm hoping that over time they will just devote more resources and take it more seriously and understand what they really have there
baby, I
because
swear it's
their team.
deja vu.
I'm pretty sure the team that makes the Tales games has not really grown in size much over the past several entries. So like the team that made Abyss, I think like that amount of people is roughly the same amount of people that made Arise. So when you think about the demands of modern gaming that I talked about, modern game development, that you see why they get stretched so thin sometimes. Like they've had to what's the word, outsource a lot of
Mhm.
pieces of the development for the past several entries, and
Is
I
this a
don't know,
problem?
maybe they won't have to do it as much.
Is this problem? I remember we had the same conversation years ago. And I remember you saying the exact same thing years ago. Zasteria, Basiria, and so on. We literally, that's why I made that deja vu quote. We've had this exact same conversation. Every time a new release comes, it's like, oh, maybe the next one,
Yep.
they're gonna probably be able to. And the reason I ask is because I know this problem is not unique to Namco.
Mm,
It's not unique to the Tell's
right.
development team. Like other companies have small teams with small budgets and they're able to put out heat. So I don't really
Yes.
like
Yes.
giving them that room to breathe anymore because that's not a unique problem to Namco. Gaming development has that problem across the board. COVID is no longer an excuse for me anymore because a lot of
Yep.
everybody else went through
Yep.
COVID too, the pandemic, and they still were able to pump out pretty decent games or pretty good games. So I'm going to try again on that one, and especially.
Mhm.
And the thing is, this conversation, I would most likely be more lean to what you're saying if remaster was not a thing, because Arise I thought was a good step, a positive step towards Tales as far as this whole reimagining thing. It annoyed me that LMBS is kind of gone for good, but I still stuck with them, and I did have fun with Arise to an extent. And there are a lot of
Yeah.
problems with it that that could easily be changed in the next
Yeah,
entry.
I mean,
However, then you see Symphony remaster come out, and it's just like, Ray, that all that goodwill I was starting to build back up, you just kind of
yeah.
kicked it again. And it's like, do y'all even care
I
anymore?
wonder if they made the remaster in house or just like hired somebody to do that.
I think,
Whoever it was, they did a terrible
Uh,
job.
but still, it's your
Yeah,
project though. It's your
yeah,
game. At some
right.
point, I'm pretty sure there got to be a conversation, whether it's a Zoom meeting, a phone call, paperwork across the desk.
yeah.
Something
Got to
has
be
to
quality
happen.
control.
Yeah, there got to be something
Yeah.
that's going on. You don't just hand it off and say, "Okay, remaster this game that our name is going to be on." Because when you turn the game on, what's the first thing you see when you turn the Tell's game on? A white screen shows up with the Bandai Namco. Like you putting your name on that. And I don't know about them, but I know how I am and how at least any job I worked in. If your name was going to be associated with a project, you most likely wanted to make sure it was done correctly. You don't just say, "Oh man, you handle that." You give it to the intern or some new guy, and just put my name on it though. You sure? You don't know what you might get. You feel me?
Yeah,
Yep.
Yeah.
So it's like if you bold enough to put your logo on that game when you boot it up, if you were bold enough to when they promoted it on the Nintendo Directs, Bandai Namco's new remake Tales of Symphonia remaster. Hey, everything's going to be associated with you. You're going to take the heat, not whoever you gave the actual work to, whoever you third partied it out to. It's still on you. And somebody, I'd imagine there's a liaison, there's somebody that would be having some kind of project manager that would be having their eyes over the whole thing to some extent. So at what point, they can't sweep that under the rug and blame nobody. That's still on you. You
And
you hit
like,
the green light and you let that game get released like that.
yeah,
And
exactly. Yeah.
well, then you see all of the ire that is caused in the community, and you say, okay, well, we're going to look into it. It's been what, a month and a half? Nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Radio stop. Nothing. Not even. No one's saying you got to fix every single bug right now. But damn, can you at least
They put out a survey.
a survey that doesn't even allow you to really say anything? It just kind of has pre-written questions because they know that if they gave an option for people to say what they really wanted, yeah, it wouldn't go too well. And I remember laughing with Darkrai about this because I said I remember Darkrai back. Funny enough, I should probably name the title this Deja Vu because when we did the first podcast,
Right.
we were a friends group. We were talking about the exact same things we're talking about now back then. And this is
Mhm.
back in the height of when Arise had no information coming out, and we were in that
Yeah, I think
that
this was like
drought,
2019 or something.
right? And I remember saying the exact same things I'm saying now about how I said it was just us because at first people thought, oh, y'all just crazy, y'all just y'all think that give them a chance, they give them hope, and here we are, flash forward years later, and now this seems to be a majority opinion I see now that everyone is getting fed up with Namco,
Yeah.
and now I see a state of play, I'm seeing directs, I'm seeing all these other companies and all these other games give a lot of showcases to these titles, and this whole old we just stay silent in the back while y'all just sit and pray. It can't work for Namco anymore. I'm gonna need them to go ahead and step forward, and no
Yes.
more of these little streams talking about rice cakes and ramen like and hoodle slippers. Like it's time to really like have a sit down, especially the fact that y'all have a YouTube channel. It might be time to actually either do
Mhm.
their own kind of developmental blog, podcast themselves, but it's time to put Tomizawa or whoever on a chair in front of a microphone, and it's time to really talk about what's going on with this series and what our real direction is moving forward, and give us some transparency. You can't keep asking for faith and keep asking for loyalty, and then you keep doing us like this. And I say this as probably one of the few remaining OGs in the series. A lot of other people I knew jumped ship a long time ago. They just got tired of it, and yet I'm still here recording. I'm still here, especially with this server now, still trying to make something happen. And it's like, brother, when y'all got to meet us halfway.
I
And
remember,
I don't even think they capitalizing off that YouTube
like,
channel effectively.
I
Yeah.
remember when there was a time where, like, and Clip will back me up on this because, like I said, Graces F is my favorite Tales game. That's a fact. Like that is
Mhm.
still true to this day. And I remember a time where I would talk to Clip many times about how I really, really want Graces F ported, because like that's my favorite game. That's the one I really like a lot. And then it got to the point where things are getting so bad, especially once the remastered happened, that I told Clip that, like, bruh, I don't even think I even want Graces F ported anymore. Just simply based off the fact that, like, what if they make that worse too? What if the port introduces brand new problems that were never there in the first place? What if the game just keeps constantly crashing? What if
Yeah,
what if
What if they
they
base it off of the Wii version?
what if they
Mhm.
bump up the DLC practices? We got to the point where you sit at a campfire in Tales of Arise and you got DLC like blasted right in your face, talking about art DLC and all this other stuff. So
Yeah.
it's like,
Oh, same
how do I
direction with
even
a
know that they
mobile
would
game.
even give it justice?
What do you say,
Kind of,
Solbis?
it kind of reminds me of your typical mobile game. You're just playing the game normally, but then it's like, oh, you want to be freed from ads? Pay for this game. Oh, you want to? Oh man, you're running low on coins and premium currency and stuff, right? Well, here you go. It's only like $15 for the in-game currency for the extra coins and stuff. Yeah.
Speaking of
Oh
MOBA,
man. Oh yeah.
uh,
Man.
I would hope that the colossal L's that were taken. I don't count Hysteria as an L because they had like a 10-year stretch. That's to
Yeah,
me that's
that
a
one.
success.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that one ran its course, and they
Yeah,
decided they're done with it. That one lasted a super long
yeah,
time.
a decade.
Right.
I'm talking about Luminaria. Is it
And
Luminaria? Luminaria
yeah, Luminaria and
and
Christoria.
Christoria, massive L's.
Mm.
Um, Christoria,
Yeah,
that's the one that hurts me the most though, because
I mean,
I never played it. I never intended to, but I definitely liked
I,
what it
I
would have
played
been
it for
about.
like 2 days, but yeah, it's
Same.
Yeah, I would have much rather that had been like a normal game. It's crazy because those two games like came out and died in between our last podcast and this one. And it's just, I mean, we were talking about Luminaria the other day, how that game didn't even last a year. That one lasted like 6 months before they shut it down.
It was just 6 months.
Yeah,
it might
didn't
have
last
been
long.
more like 8 months, but it was less than a year.
All I know
Oh,
is
yeah, for sure.
that I to this day tinfoil hat, but I truly do believe that Cursoria was intended to be a console title, maybe like a small one, but it was I think it definitely was intended to be one. And that was around the time they started pushing those mobile game hard, and that's when I was concerned. I wasn't sure that if Tales was even going to be on console anymore because it seemed like
Yeah.
they just wanted to go hard mobile, and then they took a colossal L from that. And I guess while they licked their wounds, then they released Symphonia Remaster, and it's like, dude, what are y'all, what are y'all doing to y'all? So y'all just
Yeah,
constantly
it's just
running into the
L
wall on this thing.
after L. Like, they're 1 for 4 right now in terms of Arise, Christoria, Luminaria, and Symphonia Remaster. Their 4 most recent releases. Only one of those came out like fine.
I always figured that Symphonia was basically the equivalent to how Final Fantasy VII was popping, because Symphonia was a lot of people's first Tales game, the same way
Right.
Final Fantasy VII was a lot of people's first Final Fantasy game, and it was particularly popular compared to some of the other games in the series. And considering how many times we've had that game, figured they treat it with a little bit more, at least a little bit more respect than that.
Like,
Instead, we have
yeah.
Cyclone that looks like Healing Wind in Symphony Remastered, but
Yeah,
hurting
How does that
breeze.
happen?
yeah, how did that happen?
It's crazy.
How did that happen?
Instead of Cyclone, instead of Healing Stream, we get no. Instead of Healing Wind, we get Hurting Breeze.
Yeah, I forgot.
Like-
yeah, they literally have special moves and
Oh, it's
arts
so
that
bad.
are bugged out with their animations and playing like wrong animations and stuff like that. That's never happened before.
And like, hell, we like, me and Clip have also like talked about like man, the other thing too, because we keep talking about like how they can't just slide by with like half-ass efforts. That also goes in terms of like, give more value to these ports. Like I feel like it can't just be enough for us to ask like, oh, I want to be able to play this game in higher quality. Where's the quality of life features? Why can't I skip all the text-based scenes in Symphonia? Where's stuff like me not having to worry about how my stats are affected because I want to use a cool costume that I really like? Or if a Graces F port were to come out, do I still have to worry about how long it takes to level up titles, or just straight up not knowing how to get them, or not even seeing where my grade is going, how I'm getting grade, and like not until I've like finished a playthrough, and like Karani said, now you're just given this big old list in the game menu of just like, oh, here's where all your grade went, and then you're just sitting there just like, what, huh?
That's my main thing. Like when from a remaster, Symphonia is not a remake, so I'm not looking for, some folks looking for a rise graphics. I'm not looking for all that. I'm just looking for, it's pretty much the things you mentioned. Very small quality of life changes, especially for an old arcade game like Symphonia. I was really hoping that would have been the case.
Yep.
Like you said, a cutscene skip. For me, fast forward, like how the DC and Rebirth them just let you hold square and you can just kind of speed through the text. If you couldn't just skip it, at least that option would have been nice. The fact that the little stupid EC ship was a selling point is kind of an eye roll. Because you only ride in that thing for like an hour. It's just like it's just nonsense. I was hoping for a bunch of other small stuff just across the board. Like maybe a couple more costumes, like you said. Costumes. Maybe let that be
more
separate
costumes.
the costumes from your stats.
Yeah, stuff like that. Very small things that could have easily made that
maybe
game
more art shortcuts. There's no reason you should still only have 6.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, shortcuts. Maybe faster map movement.
Why not make your EX dungeons less annoying? Like, please.
Maybe like a quick save option.
Yes.
Especially these days, because it's not the old days where we can just sit here and after school in the summertime and just play games all day. Most people now, I guess I would say most people in this target audience are most likely going to be on the move, hence mobile, or they're going to be in their 20s, 30s, and so on. And even then, I see even on the younger side, I doubt they really have much time to just sit and play games all day. Assuming they have some kind of social life or school, work, or whatever else is going on.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's just those. I just feel like those old days, unless you're a child, like those old days are just spending 18 hours a day just playing some like that. That's over and done with. And even if it were those days, still give us those accessibility options to be able to kind of speed things up if we don't want to commit 50, 60, 70, 80 hours to a game anymore that quickly, to grind this or grind that. Like it shouldn't have to, grinding shouldn't even be a thing anymore to me. I'm at the
I
point
agree. I
now. That's
agree.
why I use cheat
I
engine
agree.
on everything. If I'm not trying to grind anymore. That's just pointless. I
Agreed.
feel like it's a colossal waste of my time to grind something. Just give me an option to, kind of pick and choose or play how I'm gonna play or whatnot.
That like more RPGs should embrace modifiers, or like
Mhm.
this is why we
Oh, yeah.
also talk about quality of life features. Like, Bravely Default was praised a lot, not just because it was a solid RPG, but it also started paving the way for like more RPGs to be all like, hey, what if we just give players the options to be like, okay, I don't want random encounters. Okay, maybe I want to speed through the battle a bit. Maybe I want to adjust how my EXP is distributed across my party a
Oh,
little bit better. Things like that.
that reminds me.
Yeah.
Grade shops need to be like an optional. I know some of the later games like Sisteria onward did it. You should be able to turn on grade shop
Oh yeah,
options on whim. That like
that that was great. That's actually one of the greatest things about Syria that a lot of people don't know. Is you
Yeah,
could turn
yeah.
those new game plus bonuses on and off
yes.
as you
Mhm.
play.
Why is that not
That
a?
should
Why is that
be
not a
default.
thing? Yeah, why is that not a thing? And I'd imagine it'd be simple enough to add these type of
Yeah.
features. If you can fix the goddamn EC ship, that told me y'all had the options. That's what kind of tilted me a little bit about that. The fact that that was like a major selling point. Look, I get the 60 frames per second deal. I'm not even going to trip about that. But when they were like, "Oh, the EC ship has better movement," that told me y'all still had enough access or enough knowledge on the underlying under the hood of what's going on with this game and the engine.
Right.
Y'all could
Right.
fix a lot more with this game if you wanted to, but you just refuse to. And then at the
Yep.
bare minimum, you could even make the game look good. It looks a mess. It looks terrible. It looks worse than the
Yes.
PS3
Yeah.
version. It's just like,
On the
come
Switch in
on.
particular, it looks terrible.
Yeah, like, and we're also it's also one of those bad cases of like really poor timing in terms of release, because now we're also at a time where developers and teams are putting in more efforts to make sure that their ports that come out specifically on Switch that they've already had come out on like the more powerful consoles, that they either get like completely different teams to work on them and make sure they do it right, and they're very much involved with the process to make sure it runs smoothly. So you got stuff like Doom 2016, Doom Eternal, and Persona 5 running really well on Switch. Solid ports. Even indie developers who make stuff like Hades are willing to go out of their way to make sure, hey, we not only want this to be just decent on Switch, we want it to run great so that no matter how they experience our game, they will have a good time with it. And that's important. I feel like
Yes.
that doesn't really get mentioned enough.
And I think what needs to be more important is that they need to Namco actually needs to step up and follow through with what they said they were going to. I remember when they first
Yes,
made that YouTube channel and
absolutely.
they had that stream with that Toy Coon dude or whatever, and they were like, "Oh, we should. I thought the impression, because I'm pretty sure Tomizawa said it, that they was supposed to be like kind of a bridge
Hmm.
to give the fans the ability to communicate with them and vice versa, and they will actually give fan feedback on these games and whatnot, and then it just radio silence again.
I
Like,
think it's more of a way for them to just, I don't know,
shut me out.
advertise the series, but they don't really reach new people with it. It's only something that somebody would watch if you're already a fan of the series. And all this stuff where they've talked about, making a bridge to the fans has gone by the wayside. Like, remember when they were developing Arise and
Yep.
Tomizawa started that developer blog that had
Yes, I
like
do.
Man.
3 updates and then it just stopped.
Disappeared. Yep.
Oh, that was
As I remember back
tragic.
then, we were like, "Oh yeah, Tomizawa, yeah, he's really about it. He's putting his money where his mouth is. He's out here. He's posted about the development. Then boom,
How
silence."
foolish I was.
Ooh.
I had so much hope, man, when that man got on. I was so
Yeah, I
hopeful.
Oh
don't know.
man.
I don't know. Like, obviously, it's not like he's been the producer for that long. It's not like that many games have shipped under him. But like, it is still weird kind of like it's almost, even in this short period of time, I feel like there's been a shift in Tomizawa just in this short period of time. At least
Dead
as an
inside to me.
outsider looking in.
He looks dead inside to me. I remember when he first got on, he seemed somewhat excited, and then I guess something happened internally, and ever since then, every time I see those streams, I might be, looking into it too deep. But he always looked like he wasn't interested anymore after a while, as if someone just kind of. I know that look because it's the look I've had on jobs when you start off like, oh man, I'm about to put in work, boy, and then you kind of deal with more and more nonsense by the day, more and more red tape, and eventually you just hit the mat. F it, I'm just gonna get my check, and you just show up. And you're not really there anymore, and that's what it seemed like, at least on some of those streams. But I was hoping the developer blog would actually turn into something. I was hoping that those little surveys they've done like what 3,
Yeah,
maybe more
they did
surveys.
one after Berseria for sure. They did one after Arise. They might have done. Yeah, they've probably done a thing about 3.
And it always feels like nothing comes out of it though.
Yeah.
At least maybe I may have missed a video or two, but I don't see any indication that anything. I don't think they read them because, like I said, was it Dark? Were we talking about that? I was like, do they even have the manpower to read all of those surveys or get an idea what's going on, or were they going to run it in?
We talked about that because
I think they probably run it through like a sorting algorithm or something.
Yeah.
Chat GPT.
I remember talking about that. Like, oh, bruh. I remember even because like Clip and the others will remember this as well too. Because like we all reacted to it at the same time. We saw the image of like the I guess they call it the collector's edition, or like pretty much like the one that came with like the steel case and all the extra stuff.
Which game?
For Symphonium Remastered.
That collector's.
Yeah, one of the worst I have ever seen. Like they said, we're gonna make your steel case box art a zoomed in skit image of an irrelevant character. Yeah, Corinne, to a relevant character to the story. You just plaster it right on the front and back of the steel case. And like, like what these art cards or whatever we said we're gonna give you, they're just screenshots from the opening of the game. There's no real actual new art or anything like exciting. Like with a lot of other really good collector's editions and stuff out there, you might really get a cool like art book, maybe some behind the scenes stuff, you might get a really cool figure, something.
Even Vesperia Definitive Edition in Japan got brand new cover artwork drawn by Fujishima.
The collector's edition of Xillia 2, I remember it. Really good. Good stuff. It's like where's that at? Where's that kind of stuff at?
All right, so from the last time we had spoke on this subject to now, to Arise, to post Arise, and in a post Arise world, do y'all have any faith or hope that Namco can get right with the Tell series?
It's difficult. I don't know.
Oh god, it's difficult for me because it's like, on one hand, part of me wants to say yes, just in the sense of I have seen companies come back from what should have been like game over like status kind of stuff, whether it's like SNK, Sega, Capcom.
Remember people was calling them what, Crapcom for the longest.
Crapcom for the longest. Now we're in a brand new era of like of Hopecom. I've seen one person call it. Where
actually, didn't Konami kind of bring it back too? Because they were really
sort of. Like
they're kind of half in, half out. Like they said they were gonna stop with games, and then they're still putting out games occasionally.
Like, so like that's the part of me that like wants to say yes, but then the reason that part of me wants to also say no is because I see time and time again like how, we promise something, we don't deliver. We promise something, we don't deliver. We promised this about an old game, we didn't deliver on it, or it just never happened. We promised that we would give you a quality port of Symphonia, didn't happen. Far off from the mark. Like we said we would really capitalize off of those millions of sales from Arise, didn't really happen. Like Clip mentioned, think about other big titles that have happened over the course of gaming. When Nier Automata blew up, it blew up. Like there was a lot of momentum based off it. Nier Automata is even getting an anime. Think about that. Persona 5, same thing. Yeah, got an anime. Persona 5, same thing. Spinoffs, more merchandise. An anime, mobile game. You know, like, and whether you like those things or not, those are just examples of that's them capitalizing off of the success that happened off of that one game. Like it clearly makes a difference, you know.
The
So
thing is, those two games you just mentioned, like Persona and
mhm,
Nier Automata, both of those have a lot of staying power because
yep,
not only are they super, like, they're super unique and they embrace their strengths, like we talked about before, which Tails
exactly,
seems like
yes,
embarrassed to do. Like
yes,
that's what both neither of those games are like quite as like they're both sort of limited in some ways, both Persona 5 and Nier Automata, but they hide that in clever ways and they really embrace their uniqueness, which makes them special. And also they both have like strong, complete feeling stories that don't feel like they just fall apart somewhere along the way, which is an issue with a lot of Tales games,
right, right,
especially with even most recently with Arise. Like even if you made an Arise anime, like I don't know how much it would really touch or resonate with people, because it would just be kind of like, yeah, it's fun casual watch, but that's it,
I mean, the series anime was good in the first season.
Yes, the serious
yeah,
anime was good in
yeah,
the first
it
season.
was, yeah. I
Uh,
guess I guess like, oh, well, hey, Karani, there you go. It's kind of poetic in a right, in a way, right? Like it starts off strong, and then it just kind of falls apart.
Yeah.
I think Tells needs to focus, and I actually find it in my overall opinion. I actually think that even though we're joking about it, I do think sometimes you kind of need to get your ass kicked for you to learn.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
I think Namco they clearly have a vision of what they want to see Tells. I think Tomizawa has a vision on where he wants to see Tells, and
Hmm.
I can't speak to the politics, the internal politics they're going through, but Arise was I have my issues with it, but it was a good step. It did look good. It played well, um, and I know that whatever the next title will be, it seems like they're focused only on kind of major titles right now. The
Hmm.
L's that they took with mobile was necessary. I
Yeah.
think that was a necessary ass whooping that
Wake
they
up
needed to
call.
take.
Yeah.
Yeah, to
Yep.
realize that
Yep.
you playing with the big boys. And I made a joke on Twitter, especially all y'all being young. I'm pretty sure at some point in your time, young African American brothers in here, that you know how it was back in the day when you used to try to go play with your friends on the basketball court, but all the older kids was on the court, so you couldn't play. And unless you was able to show and prove that she was about it. I remember I don't
Hmm.
know if y'all can relate to that, but I remember those days fondly. Where
Same.
if you weren't really good at basketball, you had to stay your ass on the sidelines and wait, until you either got big enough or you got good enough to where you had a reputation to, be able to play with the big boys. I think Namco pushing LMBS and trying to play with, in this bigger field of action RPGs, you playing with the big boys now. And Square Enix definitely should have. I hope that this state of play put them on notice today. And to sit back and say, okay, what we're going to do moving forward with this series. And now
Well,
that mobile hey, I'm almost finished. That mobile
uh,
kind of waxed that ass with Cristoria and Luminaria taking the L. That they say, okay, let's just because the new Ray's development. I mean, the new Ray's content looks phenomenal. It looks fun. The
yeah.
characters look great. Let's focus
Hmm.
on Ray's. Ray's is clearly our moneymaker. And let's reassess what we're doing. We're getting our asses beaten in the quote retweets for Symphonia Remaster. Go ahead, get a patch out. I'm talking about a phenomenal patch that fixes the issues and maybe add a little something, something to it. If they really, that's me. If they're bold enough, or if they're brave enough, not
Yep.
brave enough, if they're smart enough, I would say add
Yep.
a little something, something to it as well. Some costume, something to show goodwill, but to show that y'all actually trying to make something happen with the series. And now with this state of play with 16, with Ringlead coming, whatever other games are coming up the pipeline, that maybe it's time to reassess and focus on what the hell we're doing. So the next Tell's game cannot afford to be like a Rise. It can't. Like a Rise set somewhat of a bar, but it needs to be significantly higher because you're playing in a bigger realm with bigger players.
Hmm.
And you can't, there's no way the next game can come out looking like a Rise 2.0 when games like 16, Final Fantasy 16 are coming out. You got to step up the bar. And
Yeah.
or hone in on what y'all do great with Tails and focus on your Tails fans again. Like I told Darkrai, it's time. Every company seems to have to go through this part where they have to go back, back to our roots. It might be time to go back to your roots. Like you saw with RE recently, they got their asses whooped after a while, and it's like, oh, we back to our roots. We're going back to the horror. Well, Tails, that's and not necessarily you don't have to go back LMBS, but it's time to go back to LMBS. It's time to stick to what you know and what you do well, and
Yep. Yep.
and focus on your
Absolutely.
fan base again. That's the problem.
Yeah.
And the last point I'm gonna make on it is every company or every game series you could think of that kind of had like a weird falling upward, but they have really poor quality games, or just the games just kind of lost focus on what it was about. They always end up having to rotate back down. The problem is they always, what's the core issue they always have? They always abandon their core fan base. You never abandon your core fan base because they're the ones who gonna actually be there for you. It's like a musician. If you abandon your core fan base and you try to go do a whole different sound, and then your sales flop, it's because your core fan base ain't checking for it, and they always come crawling back. What does that bring you back to me? So
It's
it's
funny
just
because I was making this exact analogy before you came back. I was talking to Dark Knight Soulbeds about this. Yeah, it's exactly like with music. You gotta cater to your true fan base. Cater to your strengths, which will keep the true fans around.
and keep
Yes.
us happy and build off of that, because it's your core fan base are the ones who are going to bring more people into your series. For example, I posted a Tales of Vesperia, the recent arc ones I did, and one guy just from the Flynn one, he was like, "Oh, I'm about to start playing Tales now." That's all it took. Then I got a notification that some guy had went dug up my old Yuri one, and he was sharing that with his friends. That's how the series grows, especially with your content creators, your just your community in general. If they actually focus on interacting with this community, whether it's a liaison through the US Namco, whoever, Europe could have their own little hub or whatnot, but focus on your community, and your community is the one that's going to build it up for you. We're going to be the ones that are pulling in new people. You can market all day and all you want, but you think Thorlar or whoever these super Tales fans y'all pulled in for a rise are even around? No. You want to know what I did? A year later, I checked all of those YouTube channels for all of those so-called Tales super fans. Not a single Tales video could be found.
Yeah.
Yep.
Not a single Tales video. Everybody did the demo for a rise, and they didn't even play the game.
Yep.
I didn't even see an LP. Nothing. All of these so-called Super Tales fans. So they jumped on trying to grab VTubers and trying to grab cats who got like a million subs or whatnot. And it's like, okay, yeah, they probably slid them a little check and say promote our game, promote our game. That may have helped y'all get sales, but out of all those 3 million sales, how many people can say that they're actually Tales fans out of that 3 million who stuck around with the series? Most likely, very small number of
Mhm.
people stuck around after that. And then you have a disastrous release like Symphonia Remaster. You have little to no access to any previous Tales games. And any Tales games you do have access to, they're kind of in a weird state. They need quality of life touches because y'all don't have ports and y'all don't have proper remasters. So Tales is in this weird perpetual state that anytime you will grab anyone new, they're going to get spit right back out, because who's going to be interested in playing Tales of a Legendia? If they even had access to it, or Symphonia Remaster, this is a ill. What is this game? This is terrible. I'm out. Is this what the Tales series is about? I'm not even going to bother. And they're
Yep.
gone. There's only so much a boss collection or a combo video can do to keep people's in. We can build the interest, but it's up to Namco to keep the interest. And in order for them to keep the interest, they need to get involved with the community. They need to actually start taking their games seriously, give us access to those games. They're literally sitting on Steam right there. That's a money-making machine right there, Steam,
Yep.
and y'all not playing with it.
Steam and the Nintendo Switch.
Correct. You're telling me
Yep.
that Persona
Yep.
4 Golden can get ported to off the Vita to Steam, and then didn't it get ported again?
Yeah,
To
it came out
PS4?
on Switch in January.
Hey,
Yeah.
And all the consoles. It's on every console now.
there you go. Like,
Mhm.
what's stopping Namco from doing this? And I doubt they would take that much money to start bringing Tales over to bring Tales over to make it more accessible for the community. And then especially now you have Pull of East Origin. You got Life Bottle Productions. You got Luminaria Tales. They're translating your old games. Get with them. Boom. That cuts. How much cost does that cut from a localization standpoint? Because you already got the fan translation. If you freaking, who was it, Falcom, or was it,
Yeah, it
who
was
owns
Falcom that did that.
at the time? Yeah. So if they can say, hey, and they shake hands like Godzilla and Jetman with the East community, and we got East Origin. That's what I remember. I wanted to play that game for a long time, and then boom, and what did it come out on? Steam. Come on,
Yep.
Namco, what are you doing? Like, you have the clear path right here to resurrect your series and to give it legitimacy and to actually build on what your community has already laid the foundation for y'all. Stop trying to abandon us and actually work with us, and then watch your series will flourish from there, because you will actually have content creators, musicians, artists, everyone who's involved in this community will be so excited about it that it ain't gonna be nothing but positivity being talked about, and that gains interest from from outsiders who will be looking in. You don't have to run into videos like Symphony or D Master. It wouldn't. That's the type of stuff. Those are the narratives that are being painted right now from any outsider who will search Symphonia or Tales of series. They're going to see nothing but negativity.
Yeah.
Because this is what you're creating. If an interested Tales fan says, "Hey, just beat Tales of Arise. What's the next Tales game I should play?" and they go to Reddit, nothing but negativity. And it's understandable. The fan base is getting upset. They're fed up of being treated like like we don't matter. In the end of the day, we're tired of being disrespected by this company, and then at the same time, we joke about it all the time. Hey guys, I just finished Arise. Arise is great. Anybody have any suggestions on what I should play next? All right, but what you first got to do, you got to get PCSX2, right? And don't forget, you got to get RCPS3 as well. Now, if you want to play the DS titles, you might could use Desmumi, or you could use another DS emulator. Now, make sure you make sure you set the settings right. That way, your music don't cut off when you're playing Zilliga 2. Emulators.
Yeah, you can basically only have easy access to about 5 out of the 16 mainline Tales games right now.
And that's ridiculous. And easy access to games that aren't even that great, because they didn't the PC ports for the Tales titles. I think Berseria was the only one that was half decent on release. The other ones had to be fixed by a fan. You know what I'm saying? So if it wasn't for Caldanian, if it wasn't for him, I think they straight up abandoned Zestiria. That game was a mess, and
I think I remember
abandoned it.
I remember when I showed you guys just because when you scroll through your Steam games on the library, you'll see a set wallpaper that Steam sets for that game, and I showed you guys the Zestiria one, and it's literally just Soray with a blank stare and smile, just looking with a really bland font for the game. Like they didn't even bother to like Bazaria at least has the actual box art, like the actual art of Velvet. But when you look at Zesteria's, they didn't even bother to do that. They didn't even bother to actually put the proper box art. And just to further expand on this, man, we shouldn't be at the point because we're talking about playing to their strengths, and we don't want to lose what makes the series what it is and what makes it special. We shouldn't be at the point where we got to worry about oh man, is the next new game going to actually have multiplayer? Is the next new game actually going to have outro quotes, end battle quotes where the characters actually talk to each other more and have fun little interactions? Do I got to worry more about art DLC becoming even more prominent? Do I got to worry about losing a lot of just with that special DNA that makes Tales what it is? That's a legitimate concern.
Yeah, you never really know what they will or won't include in each game.
These are things I still can't understand why they aren't optional. I understand that some folks aren't trying to hear the characters yammer after each battle. They give us the option to toggle it on and off.
Simple.
It
Yep.
should just be an option that when the battle's
Problem
over,
solved.
it just transitions like Arise does right back to the field. Like, why is that so difficult to do? Art trees. Why is that? Just make that optional. Damn it, the game is going to play the same regardless. Just give me the opportunity to place my arts where I want to put them. Because art trees are damn near just a horizontal art. So I just don't want to have to go down
It's just
get my
different method
handheld.
of input. That's all.
Yeah, just give me the option to kind of choose which way I want to do it.
Tales of Hearts R literally has all 3 control options. It has your standard directional inputs. It has an accessory that lets you use art trees, kind of, and it has the combo command, which lets you do inputs like a fighting game.
Yep, and then they brought that back. So it's just most of the stuff that they consider features or features they take away are just optional. You can easily please and placate both sides of the anyone who in the fandom. Some people like archery, some people don't. Some people don't like in battle calls, so they get tired of them after a while. Let us turn them off. It's just simple stuff that I don't understand why they just can't do this. And we're living in a patch, a gaming. We're in an era now of patches.
Yeah,
So
patch culture as they call it.
Patch culture. Thank you. What's stopping y'all from coming back a month or 2 later? I mean, Scarlet Nexus had no problem doing it. These dudes been, I think to this day they're still releasing new content for that game. What's stopping y'all to do that with Tales? Arise, I understand, okay, it came out how it came out, Well, what's after 3 million subs? I truly thought a story DLC was coming. What's stopping you from adding?
Yeah,
What's stopping you from adding costumes off the road? And
exactly.
even then, if you want to make a DLC costumes, that's fine. Just where's that? Just like show some kind of activity, something to show that there's still some kind of care going on into these games. Maybe hey, there's a patch that cleaned up some bugs. There's a patch that added maybe a new boss fight here, and here's some costumes for y'all. Here's some new grade shop options. Just simple stuff like that. I feel like that can come in later because if the fans can, for example, multiplayer, the multiplayer mod for Arise, which works relatively well. So clearly, y'all have the tools and the resources to do it. And if a fan can do it, or a small team of people can make it happen, I think it was just one guy. So we're in that time now. This ain't the old days. If I could see one or two people make these amazing mods for games and whatnot, what's stopping an entire company with an entire development team? I'm sure y'all got enough time to add something like. And this is the part where I will come in and say, well, this is where the community interaction is important. Then maybe
Yeah.
make your surveys actually. Maybe open a forum on the Steam forums or something. Hey, what kind of features were y'all looking for in this game? How did y'all like it? What did y'all looking for? Oh, I really
Mhm.
would have loved X, Y, and Z, and then maybe release a patch that offers that.
We
Maybe after a certain amount
yeah,
of time, y'all
yeah.
might eventually stop updating the game, but show some kind of initiative here that y'all still
Yeah.
care about the games beyond after the release. And that's the thing, y'all celebrated 1 million sales, 2 million sales, 3 million sales, and we got nothing to show for it. That's the
Mhm.
part that disappointed me the most with Arise. Is we just got a damn like I said, just all I remember is just a picture of the cast in some orchestral costumes. I'm
The
like, that's
the
your celebration.
the,
That's
the
it.
irony is that
Oh yeah,
Zisteria
yeah.
had the most post-launch support, I think, of any Tales game.
They did. They really want Cesarea to be V1, but they fumbled
Yeah.
the ball so hard on that. That's on them. They made that decision to fumble the way they did.
And
They had intent to do a whole bunch of DLC stories and whatnot. It's
exactly.
just they got greedy and they got lazy.
Yep.
Lazy. The Alicia DLC was terrible. It
Yeah,
was
yeah,
terrible.
yeah,
Like
yeah. I'm so glad that there was a lot of pushback against that. Like stuff like that is so important, man. Like
Yeah.
when a company is pretty much putting something out and they're saying, hey, this is this is what we want. This is what we want to do with this series or whatever. It's very important to like really fight back on that kind of stuff. Because remember,
they
y'all,
charged for that.
we were at a point. We were at a point where Microsoft wanted the Xbox One to be completely internet required to just
Yep.
use the console, and that would
Yep.
not have gotten shut down if people hadn't fought back on it. Same thing with in Tails' case. So like you see these kind of things. That's why it's important to fight back on it because you got to wag the finger sometimes and hit them with the I'm not cool with that because they start towing the line like Karani has said in the past. Companies will toe lines. They will constantly test what they can get away with. And if
Yep.
people don't really push back on it, they're gonna keep going and going, and you're gonna see it raised again and again and again, and it gets worse.
I would have been 100% fine supporting Zesteria's endeavors post release. Aren't so lazy with that Alicia deal, and they had the nerve to charge money for that. And they,
Yeah, and
I
it
don't care
was
how
and it
short it
was
was, but
like $13 too.
yeah, that last little the main dungeon in that it was just a recolor of another boring area from
Ruins
Zestiria
or whatever.
ruins,
And
and they added it just with some rehashed bosses, and it's like, come on, man, like this is ridiculous. And
That's that,
that
that
had to be
ain't
one of
it.
the most boring experiences I've had with Tales is running through that dang those ruins with Alicia with that
it's
annoying
like they
ass
put
track.
the Tartarus in that game. It was like 10, 13 floors or something.
Oh, the same thing. Oh man, come on. And then y'all
Gotta
sit
do
there
better.
and then you want to take your ball and go home. Like we're not going for that. And the community isn't going for it. And that was kind of the beginning of the end. I feel like in regards to goodwill with the
Yeah,
community,
yeah,
it
I
slowly
agree.
started to
I
fumble
agree.
after that. Because they
Absolutely.
definitely had plans for
Yeah,
that
yeah.
game.
Zestiria as a whole, yeah, definitely made the entire community skeptical of Namco.
It's
Hmm.
what people like to call in certain franchises like Journeys the boiling point. When
Yeah,
basically somewhere a game comes along in a franchise where it's just all like this fumble thing so hard that the fans have just been like nah, this is not acceptable. This is really bad like for this franchise, and it can cause some people to like Clip said have really ill will. And some people, just down the line, they just will never regain that faith again. It just gets like
That's
that. That's
that's
what it
what
is.
Zestiria was my turning point because I was so excited for
Hmm.
Zestiria, and then
yeah.
everything that happened after
Yeah,
that. was when I slowly started to just gain a lot of animosity towards Namco. I still stuck with them, but goodness,
Mhm.
there was a long time I just really had no faith in them, and to this day I still don't. And
Right.
and it's just year after year after year of, oh, we're going to have to see the next move, hopefully moving forward, and they never do. And it's like just it's like watching someone you care about just keep making the same mistakes over and over and over. At some point, you start to be like, I'm just gonna wash my hands of you. And I've considered it so many
Yeah.
times. I don't
Yeah.
have the
Yeah.
same hype or anticipation for the teleseries like I used to. I don't,
Same.
and
Same.
I don't know if I'm ever
Same.
going to get that back either. It would most likely take a consecutive string or a consecutive amount of releases that are just quality to
They
finally
would
start to
they would have to
rebuild.
come back like Capcom has for
Yeah.
me to feel like
Exactly. Yep. Yep.
Yeah, that's how I feel about it. I mean, it would have to be a string. Tales of Tempest
For
would be a
sure.
great start for me. Tales of the
Oof.
Tempest would be a great start, but it would have to be quality ports.
that.
For me, it would start with transparency. It would start with community outreach, and that'd be the first thing to start building some goodwill with me. And I'm pretty sure that could speak for a lot of people in that regard. That's all we really just information communication can
Mhm.
change perception overnight. Third would be to actually start releasing, maybe fixed remaster would be a good start. So that way Tales fans who wanted to play this game on Switch can actually play it. And then number four, start releasing some quality titles, whether it's remakes, ports, or a new game. Like it has to be a constant, consecutive, back-to-back good releases, and that's when I'll probably start to have some hype for Tales again. But as to speak right now, the same way I just watched that state of
Mhm.
play, and I was excited. Like this
Yes.
was great. I don't feel like
Yes.
that ever with Tales. With Rise, it was like, oh, all right, I'll get it, because it's Tales, but and it wasn't really grabbing me like that. So hopefully, moving forward, uh, like I said, deja vu, man. Because hopefully, moving forward, Hancock get their shit together,
I mean,
and we'll
we've
finally
been saying that for
years.
7
Deja
years.
vu.
Yeah, baby, I swear it's deja vu. That's all I gotta
Honestly,
say on that one.
basically since Zestiria came out, but even before that, like even with the Exilias, ever since Exilia 1, I've had issues where I'm like, well, I hope they improve this, and it's always like, well, they got this right, but they got that wrong. Oh, they got this wrong this time, and they got that right. They never get it all right.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see. So that's all I have to say on it. So if you don't want to get your last words in, and we'll wrap this up.
No, Karani, did you have any last thing you want to say?
Not really. I feel like we've said a lot. Solbez.
Well, I personally don't have a whole lot of faith in Namco. Well, any faith at all, truth be told. But time will tell. Let's see what
We'll
they
be
got in
here.
store.
We'll be
This is
here.
gonna age really poorly when, like, a couple weeks from now, they announce another mobile game.
Brother. No, it ain't because
Uh,
I know it ain't because I promise you, a year from now we're gonna be on episode 10, and it's gonna be
mhm.
the anniversary of this, and we're gonna be talking about the exact same stuff we talking about right now.
If I were to give my final closing statements, like yeah, like I honestly don't really have faith in Namco to like turn this around. Uh, but what I will say is that regardless, I definitely think that it's important. Like, and I'm speaking to like the just the Tails community here. It is important nonetheless to, like I said, stay critical, firm but fair. It's like
Hmm.
even regardless of whether this series goes like in a worse direction or a better direction, still be critical. Keep your voices loud, man. Let them know, like, because that's gonna be a big part of like what will shape this series pretty much is like how critical and fair you are of these games, whether you love them or not. You gotta just know how to put your emotions aside and think about the bigger picture, because yeah, I just
And,
hope that it turns out for the better. I really do.
and on some level, they have to know that the fans are not happy because anything that they post now, everybody
Yes.
just tears
That's
them apart.
why my last statement to them is Namco, man, they beating your ass on them core retweets.
They are.